Good evening, and welcome to Black Mental Health is Black Health. I'm your host, Bronwyn Lucas, and I'm so excited about being with you another week. Tonight, we're going to talk about anger. Why anger? Because there's so much of it around. But we're looking at anger specifically as it impacts African Americans. And wow, as I studied and prepared for this topic, it was so much. I have more than enough to talk about, I promise you. So I really want us to look at what anger is, what it does, how it manifests itself, how we're going to deal with it. Just anger, anger, anger. But as always, we're going to start with some deep breathing. Why? We need to learn to decompress. And that's actually one of the ways we'll talk about even dealing with anger. Just being able to say, I'm going to breathe. So that's what we're going to deal with tonight, anger. But first, for those of you who have never been with us, why do we do the deep breathing? Deep breathing allows us to take more oxygen into our body, more oxygen into our brain. It allows us to um, process and feel a little better, to decompress, to get rid of some of the cares of the day. As we'll talk about anger in a little bit, it allows us to just manage life a little better. So let's see what happens. I want you to close your eyes for a moment and take, and when I say take in a deep breath, take in a deep breath so deep you feel your stomach expanding because your air is going from your chest all the way to the bottom of your lungs and filling in your brain. And we'll do it to the count of 4. So breathe in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. So, as we breathe in, we allow ourselves to just decompress. And tonight, we are looking at the anatomy of anger. Just what is this thing called anger? So let's move forward. So, what is anger? Anger is an emotion. Here's some definitions, some psychological definitions for anger. Anger is an emotion characterized by antagonism towards someone or something you feel has deliberately done you wrong. Anger can also be defined as a strong feeling of annoyance, displeasure, or hostility. Anger is an emotion characterized by tension, hostility, arising from frustration, real or imagined by another person or perceived by another person. That's a lot. Anger is basically you're feeling something has done you wrong, you've been wronged, and you don't like it. You're feeling displeasure, you can feel hostile. And we're going to talk about how that really manifests itself. So, what are some reasons or some causes for anger? One is microaggression. We've heard the term microaggression now a lot, but it was originally coined by a Harvard professor, Dr. Chester M. Pierce, in 1970. And when he coined the term, it was to describe the subtle, everyday ways that Black people experience discrimination from their white counterparts. So, when we think about microaggression now, it has expanded to other subpopulations. It can be used, there are microaggressions against women in general, against minority groups, against LGBTQ community. But the term originally was developed to describe the everyday ways that Black people experience discrimination from their white counterparts. It was very specific. And let's just look at some microaggressions. Could be when someone addresses you, you're an African American and you standing next to your white counterpart, and the person addresses them, or someone comes in a room and you may be the manager, but they address your white underling because they're white, or make comments like, "When I see you, I don't see color," or "Your hair is so unprofessional." "Oh, you speak so well." Or here's an example: there were two Black women working on a production broadcast, and they both had the lowest ranking jobs in the company. And it wasn't uncommon for people to forget who was who and call one the other's name. So finally, as a joke, someone just said, "Oh, we'll just call you both Deidre," short for Whitney and Deidre, just combining their names. Microaggression is a way of depersonalizing who you are. You're just nobody, or your thoughts and feelings and actions are not valid. Research shows that microaggression that we experience can be harmful. It's not micro. Microaggressions are not small, and they impact us greatly. And even research, bears this out. It's it's not always subtle. Like I say, when that comment of "when I see you, I don't see color," I'll tell you why I personally find that offensive. I told somebody, I understand that. I really think God did what he was doing when he made me this beautiful brown. And when you don't see that, you don't see who God made me to be. So, yes, when you say my hair is not professional, why is it not? What's professional or not professional about a hairstyle? When you say um, you don't see color, or if you don't address me and you address my counterpart, wow, really? Or when you say, "Oh, you speak so well, how am I supposed to speak?" So these are all microaggressions, and these are some causes of anger because a microaggression takes away who you are. It doesn't allow you to just be you. It depersonalizes you. Other cause: violence or abuse that we experience, or we witness, or we just have an awareness of. Let's just look at these. When we think of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, the shooting in um, New York, the shooting in the church in Carolina, Trayvon Martin. When we think of all of this, it's not violence that happened to us, but just being aware of the situation that caused it. And there's so many more. I just picked out some because there are new ones happening every day. We can look at the news this week, and there are other African Americans who were killed just for being Black. And that can cause anger because you didn't do anything. Or if you did something, it was so minor that it wasn't worth dying. Or why would someone have to have 60 bullets in their body? Even if they were running away. If they were running away, they weren't a threat to you because they were going away from you. When one person shot them, couldn't everybody else stop? So we see these things and they can cause anger. You feel pissed off. Really? This had to happen? Some more things dealing with anger. When you see these slides, this is what we call the angry Black woman. The idea that being a Black woman, you are more angry. Well, research shows that as African American women, we are judged so differently based on just being emotional. As a whole, as Black people, we're emotion. As you see, I talk with my hands, right? We can be the more demonstrative. Our voices may sound deeper and more intense, even when we are just having a good time. So I get my hair cut at a barbershop when I go a lot of times. Or yesterday I went to the beauty school that's a beauty Barbie school to get my hair twisted. While I was in there, I was on the other side. There was like a wall, and the barbershop side is on one side, and where I was getting my hair braided was on another. The intensity, they were talking about football. The intensity and tone was hilarious because the young lady doing my hair and myself laughed because their tone was loud. This, that. So if you were walking in, and maybe if you were not of our culture, you like, oh, why are they so angry? That's just the way we talk. They were into it. They were some football enthusiasts. Love them some football. So as they talked about it, yes, it was loud. I mean, at one point it was loud. And that's when we both laughed. And then the conversation died and they moved on. Then they started talking about basketball and it was loud and who's this and who's that. We are, we love life and we feel it with this enthusiasm. So as they were loud and demonstrative, it wasn't anything about anger. It was about I'm enjoying this conversation and I'm into it. And it's the same with women. If we want to express ourselves, we can be perceived as being um, angry. When you look at their faces, they're not all necessarily angry. It is the perception that, oh, that's what Black women are. They're just angry. And if we're a little more demonstrative and we want to become impassioned about what we're saying, we're deemed angry. One study I read talked about women in general and how women are perceived in the workplace. And it did break it down Black, white, other women. And for if a woman gets emotional on the job, it is a negative for her. And she's weak, she's not a good leader, and all of these attributes were, thrust upon her not being as good. Well, if a male comes to the situation and he happens to cry in the meeting, oh, it's all right, man, that's strength. Wow, how different it is just based on gender. If it's an African American woman and she's impassioned or she feels any kind of emotion on the job, oh, she needs to go. And this was evidenced in real life situations, and then just, role modeling had people rate the situation they see. So, as African American women, we don't have the luxury on a work setting to just be ourselves and get our point across in an impassioned way. We have to downplay who we are and say what we want to say like this. When you might not be angry, you might just have a lot to say and you want to get it across, but you're not angry. You just have something to say. Other angry. We can see the angry child in schools, and there are also studies that talk about African American children, especially our boys, are perceived in a negative way and perceived as angry. If they, again, are more demonstrative, are more loud, are just, we just get judged for so many things in the school system. We're judged for acting out when we just want to be enthusiastic. But our kids get labeled angry so quick. And some of them, as we continue to talk about anger, are coming from homes that are horrible and they have a reason to be angry. But rather than having empathy for the anger, they are penalized for it. Thanks, they're penalized. It's as if something's wrong with you. Well, if I come from a home where there's fighting in the home, where I didn't have breakfast at home. And I got to school just as the breakfast line closed. And it's now 10 o'clock. And the last time I ate was lunch at school, and I had a snack when I got home. I'm hangry. I'm hungry and I'm angry. I'm angry because I'm hungry, and I'm hungry because I'm angry. So there are legitimate reasons. Or we, like I say, so it could really be angry, and even if the child is angry, it's not treated the same way. But we can be perceived as angry so often, and that perception comes with judgment. So the angry child. What are some other reasons for angry? We can being angry. These are some definitions of why people feel angry, and let's looking at it in a context of being African American. Feeling threatened or attacked. For us, just going to the store, someone wants to follow you just because you're black, or you don't get service, and you're um, that can be a source of anger. Feeling frustrated and powerless. When you look at the news and you see what happened in South Carolina, you see shooting. I mean, and in New York, in Buffalo, you see um, someone can get shot 30 times. You see um, Breonna Taylor. You see so many things, and it can make you feel frustrated and powerless and feel like, what can I do? I can't do anything. I see people in my practice who don't want to go outside. And then one of them said, and if I stay inside, look at what happened to Breonna Taylor. She was at home. So it can have a sense of frustration and powerless can lead to anger. Feeling like you're being invalidated or treated unfairly. When I talked about microaggressions, one of the things about microaggressions is you feel invalidated when you have to comment on something I do or how I look, not about anything I've done or said, but maybe how I said it. You invalidate me as a person. When you say, I see you, I don't see color, well, you don't see me. Because when I look in the mirror, I see some color. When I see you, I see no color. I see who you are. It's part of who you are. When my hair may not be professional, you want to come, can I touch your hair? No, it's mine. Leave it alone. I don't want to touch yours, and you don't touch mine. Or feeling like people are not respecting your feelings or your possessions. You know, it's you're not entitled to your feelings when we look at some of the different cases that have come up and when the verdicts come in, it's not like we expected. When someone can have their mother drive them and they shoot and kill African American people and they are exonerated, they're not charged with a crime. And I'm purposely not naming the names of any of these people who have perpetrated crimes against us. I don't need their name to make me angry. But when that can happen, or when I can go and shoot up a place and I'm arrested with no incident, and in the same day, someone running away is perceived as a threat, they've not shot anybody, but they're running away and they're shot over 60 times. Their body is eviscerated. These things make you feel disrespected by association. These are all part of, man, what do we do with this anger? There's so many reasons for that generated just being black in America. As I said, this is all about us and how we perceive anger, how anger can be, how we respond in an angry manner. Not good. Let's look though at just what I want to look at just two types of anger. When I studied for doing this, I read and read and read. So I went to get my hair done and I was there for about 2.5 hours. So I planned to take my tablet and read because it's bigger. I only had my phone. So I'm reading on my phone and reading about anger and reading about anger for 2 hours. So I read more than I could even imagine to do this broadcast. And when I looked at types of anger, I came up probably with about 20 different ways people, psychologists, psychiatrists, mental health professionals will break down types of anger. But I only want to look at two because we only have so much time. And one is called behavioral. It's a combination of behavioral or destructive anger. And that's where anger, significantly unhealthy experience of anger. Anger is a physical reaction common in men with anger issues, and this can be dangerous as it may be expressed through violence. This behavior or destructive violence is what tends to be perpetuated against us a lot. That's one form. When you see the shooters who will drive to a grocery store to shoot up African Americans, when you see someone who will go and sit in a church and then pull out a gun and shoot, when you see these even the 4th of July shootings, uh, and it says more common in men with anger issues. Now, we have anger issues in our own community, and we have a lot of physical abuse. So I am not negating that. That's part of the anger issues. We have um, domestic violence. That's a part of it. And, anger is a part of the domestic violence where the abuser is angry. And it may not be a reason that anyone can even figure out, why are they so angry? The woman may be in a situation where she's walking on eggshells because she doesn't want to make him angry. She doesn't want that anger to come out because she knows it will not be a pretty thing. So that anger it's real. It's real in our community. Um, However, and as it says, it's more in men. We see it more in men than we do um, in in women. Women can be angry too. Women can also be the perpetuator of domestic violence, but that's another show. But looking at this destructive or behavior anger, it's when the anger really is acting out. And we're looking at it in this context, and you don't may not know it's coming. The other side is a passive aggressive anger, and that's where you're not admitting that you're angry because you don't like confrontation, but it can come out in other ways, like just being something. I'm fine. hmm I said I'm fine. What? Oh yeah, I understand. Cause yeah, that's just the way you are. I get it. hmm Oh, yeah, you're great. You are real good. All of these can be those subtle, passive, aggressive tendencies that we can have to, because we don't want to say anything, yet we do say anything. And we think about women in the workplace. In some ways, it is easier to be an African American woman in the workplace and be passive aggressive. Why? I talked about, if you're this person who is too expressive and say what you think, you're the angry Black woman. So then I want to be the one who is just going to be calm. But what happens? You suppress it so long, it has to come out. And it can come out in a negative way. So, what do we do with this information? I never like to just say, here's a problem. I wanted to leave more of this time in what do we do with anger? Let's talk. So let's just talk about this whole thing called anger. We've kind of looked at just anger as an entity. And I made the statement being Black in America can make you angry because, and I won't say and make you because we choose how we respond, but it can be the cause of lots of anger and angst. Um, so let's look at it. Let's look at it. What happens? We do have a choice in how we respond to whatever goes on, but there's so much going on, and if we just watch the news, which I limit my news watching and my news feed reading because yeah, it can cause me to not feel good, excuse me, because of this whole thing about what's happening race wise. So I want you to do this. I want you to think about a time. So I want to talk, let me back up about just how what anger does in your body. So I want you to do this. Think about a time you were angry, just a real angry. Maybe you tried to suppress it, but inside you were angry. How did you feel? What did your body do when you were angry? By that I mean sometimes people, after a while, get a headache, they get a stomach ache, they shake. Some people grit their teeth. You're just burning it right here. You're gritting your teeth. Some people clench a fist without even knowing it. They look down and, oh. Some people get hot. They feel hot. Their face feels hot. Some people, their chest tightens. These are all physical responses. Someone said, with you can have the neck roll, the eye roll. Some people eat more, they drink more, they smoke when they're angry. But in that moment of anger, your facial expression will show it. People can see it. But your body is responding, and it's responding greatly. So anger doesn't just affect us emotionally, it impacts us physically as well. So we realize that we have a physical response to anger. Whatever yours is. If you have some, drop it. If not you, somebody you know might have a physical response. Drop it in the chat. Somebody says you cry, you curse, you cuss somebody out. But we have those reactions. Um, what and they can have a negative impact on us. So let's think about it. For some people, they can be angry to the point of your blood pressure rises because you're so angry in that moment. You literally, and that's when the headache, the chest pains. So in that moment of anger, you really can have a physical response that impacts your health. Sometimes after the anger, a person might feel depressed because they allow themselves to get that angry. Then you're upset with yourself. Um, some people will, as someone said, they'll sleep more or not sleep at all, or overeat, or drink to avoid. I can't believe that happened to me, or I'm just so angry right now. As I said, you're gritting your teeth, angry, and so you have a drink to calm your nerves, or you smoke cigarettes or other things to calm your nerves. Or you do want to get a little high because you're so angry. So we can have unhealthy coping mechanisms. We're going to talk about the good in a minute, but you can have unhealthy coping mechanisms to manage this anger. As it has its physical response, and you want to do something with the physical response. So it's not always a good thing. In that moment of anger, we have to figure out something to do. So that's the physical. But it is also psychological and can lead to depression and or anxiety. So there's a physical end. Then there is the psychological end that can happen as a result of being so angry and staying in that angry zone. Anger can lead to depression. Anger and depression have an interesting relationship. Um, Someone can become one definition of depression is anger turned inward. When you're angry at the world and then you become angry at yourself for being angry, or just that self-loathing, that can lead to depression. That's a whole nother form of anger, but that's that relationship between depression, part of that relationship between depression and anger. Or if you look at everything that's going on in our world, going back to what is happening to us as African Americans in this world that can cause anger. Well, when you begin to feel helpless and hopeless about not being able to do anything about it, that can lead to depression or anxiety. I am so angry that all this is happening, but it makes me worried, it makes me anxious, and I don't want to go outside. So we can have a physical response, physiological response, we can have an emotional or psychological response. Anger is not just in isolation. It's not just, I'm mad. it impacts our whole body, our whole being. And when we really stop and think about it, that's not good because anger doesn't tend to um, impact us positively. But on that note, let me give you an example of a way that anger can be positive. If we look just at social justice, the anger that we see and feel and experience can cause us to be a part of a movement that is working toward making change. The anger can allow us to go and vote or go and have an impact on laws, have an impact in our community to go and make change. Because remember, one small change is a change. So we can be angry about something that has happened and we're going to go and do something about it. There was a case where these people lived in this neighborhood where they wanted a stop sign because several people had wrecks here. It was kind of a blind corner. Finally, someone was killed in a car accident who happened to also live in that neighborhood. The family and the neighborhood at that point stopped just complaining passively. They had written letters to the city. They took it and got petition after got had to have X number of petitioners sign, and they exceeded the amount they needed and eventually got the stop sign. It did not bring that person back to life, but it gave their death a little meaning. Their anger turned into doing something positive. So our anger can propel us to do things. Our anger can propel us to say, I'm going to be a part of this movement. And as we're a part of this movement, I'm going to fight for social justice rather than just stay angry about it. And there's a lot we can be angry about, but is that going to help? And when you're only staying in the angry part, like I say, if you just stay there, it's going to eat away at you. Or you become the passive aggressive person because you don't want to say anything and be perceived wrong. But if you're in that passive aggressive role of, yeah, we good. I said I'm fine. And your face and everything says differently. That's not helping you. It's still holding it in and it's going to impact you physically as well. We can become ill from holding it. I always like to look at our emotions as an energy. And it's like you have that negative energy inside of you. Let me tell you what I mean by an energy or a feeling. Have you ever walked into a room and let's say two people were arguing and they stop arguing, but man, you can feel it. You can see it on their faces, even if they try to smile, but you feel like, oh, the room feels heavy. Or have you walked into a room where it is a birthday party and everybody's having a good time? The rooms feel different. The energy, for lack of a better word, in the room is different. You just feel good. Well, imagine the energy you have with imagine the energy you have when you're angry. It's like that energy in the first example of the people who were angry and arguing, and you walk in the room and like, oh, it feels heavy. Well, all that heaviness is inside of your body. Do you think that's good for your body? As I said, your blood pressure can rise. Some people can't eat when they're angry. They have headache because all of that negativity you're taking in. So we have to learn how to do something that is going to cause it to exit our body because it can't stay there. So what are some ways and things we can do? So I wanted to be real specific to African Americans. As I said, I read for yesterday alone for over 2 hours just reading about anger. And when you look at some of the global things, okay, yeah, but that's fine. But some of that we can't do. Some things we can't avoid. One of the things in talking about anger is remove yourself from the situation. But if the situation is cause for the color of my skin, it's not going away. I take it everywhere I go. If it's caused by my gender, if it's caused because I'm a black woman, it's going everywhere I go. I can't take that away. So I wanted to think of some ways to what can I do now to manage my anger differently because it's just not going anywhere from walking away. So some of the things is I said one is have a friend you can talk to. When the moments of anger happen, if you're in a situation where you maybe it's not best to deal with it right then, have someone you can talk to and to be able to vent and get that anger out. That's one. Because we can't always address it head on. However, another one is when possible, um, deal with it head on. And, you know, I don't like the way you did this. If it's a work situation, say it in such a manner where it's not going to have a negative impact on you, but when those microaggressions come your way, address them. If it's in a store, say something if you feel you're being treated poorly, and then leave. Don't. That's when the leave comes in because I'm not spending my money with you. Years ago, I was living when I lived in the Dallas area before. I was somewhere out in the Galleria, and I'm standing at a counter, and the woman reached behind. I got there, and there was a woman standing behind me, a white female standing behind me. The woman reached around me and said, "Can I help you?" to her. Well, the woman behind me said, "She was here first." Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't notice. Yeah, right. Now I was like younger then, so I decided that I was getting some Ray-Ban sunglasses. I decided I'm gonna try on every pair of glasses in this counter and take up her time. I did. And then I said, "Oh, you work on commission, right? Oh, well then I won't be buying anything from you." And I left. So that probably, I was young and impetuous. So I was like, you gonna ignore me? I'm gonna take your time. Then I wrote a letter to the manager of the store and cut up my credit card and said, "Here it is, because I will never shop at your store because this is the treatment that I received." Um, we might not have to be, take her time, but find ways to find things to do to speak up. If it's write a letter, now there's a whole Yelp reviews, but find ways to make your point known. Don't just hold it in and get home and be mad. And don't just talk to that friend, take action. Another one is we talk about breathing. Breathe your way through it in that moment because it is true. We need to think before we speak because remember, we're going to be perceived as that angry black person or that angry black woman. And then once that is in place, they won't hear you or see you, and you're now invalidated, which is going to make you more angry, and your point won't get across. So, in that moment of anger, breathe. When you take in those deep breaths, those clear cleansing breaths, you're going to put more oxygen in your brain and it's going to go more to your temporal lobe. The temporal lobe is a front part of your brain that allows you to think clearly and think rationally. We need to get all the oxygen we can into that part of our brain so that we can say what needs to be said in a what manner that we can be heard. Um, if you find yourself constantly being angry, not just because of the things that are going on, but because some people do have real anger issues. And the things I highlighted tonight, we were looking at anger in context of being African American and that how that in America can generate some anger. But we can have anger issues just that are out of off the chain because but our anger comes from other things. It could be because you have been an abused person for many years. You've been in an abusive relationship after abusive relationship. You have been mistreated. You have had things happen to you you can't explain, and now you're just angry. So there are things that happen that can cause a person to become an angry person. So we have to figure that out. And in doing that, one thing I didn't mention is we also need to figure out what are our triggers. Are you a person who's angry because so many things have happened in life? What are the things that trigger your anger? What are your buttons? And some of our buttons we can and cannot avoid, but most of them, when we know it, we can take control of that button and we can disarm the button so that someone doesn't have the power to use that to make us angry, to cause us to become angry, to allow us to allow ourselves to become angry. So figure out what are the things that cause you anger. Sometimes watching the news, reading the news feed, reading the newspaper, whatever, being abreast of what's going on can cause a lot of anger. And minimize it. You don't want to be ignorant of what's going on in the world, but at the same time, minimize what you see, what you watch, what you take in. If it is causing you anger, sadness, depression, hopelessness, frustration, any of those negative emotions, minimize it. Um, you don't have to look at it all the time. You don't have to talk about it all the time. For me, and it's been this way for many, many years, I don't watch the 10 o'clock news because, oh, I don't want that in my head, in my mind, in my spirit before I go to bed. So I will wake up and watch the news. I won't go to sleep with it. So you find out what works for you to minimize the impact of everything going on in society that can impact you. And you're right. Someone says, when you watch the news, you see the same story over and over and over. And seeing it over and over and over, every time you see it can cause a little more anger. So I can be aware, but I don't have to watch the 5 o'clock, the 4 o'clock news, the 5 o'clock news, and the 6 o'clock news, and the 10 o'clock news, and the 7 a.m., the 6 a.m. news. And it's going to be the same stories. You're right. So we don't have to do all that. And the last point is sometimes if your anger is out of control for you personally, seek professional help. Yeah, when anger is to a point where it is eating you up inside, when you're having the headaches, when you find yourself clenched fists, clenched teeth, angry all the time with people, and it's impacting you physically and emotionally, get help. Help may be in the form of therapy. Help may be in if there's a deeper reason to get at that deep reason what is causing this anger, or if maybe you just can't manage looking at everything going on. It's causing constant anger. Maybe you can take an anger management class that can be found online, or going to an anger management group where you're working with other people who have anger. But if you're staying angry, as I said, it's not good physically for you. So you want to find a way to manage it so it doesn't manage you. As we talked about anger tonight, my whole point was just I look at people being so angry. And I look at anger that is perpetuated toward us as African Americans, but I don't want to focus on that tonight. I wanted to focus on how we respond and how it impacts us. So much happens that is reason to be angry. That was not my focus. My focus tonight was what is going on that we can do, what is going on that we're experiencing, what is going on that we can do to help ourselves. That stuff is out there, and unfortunately, it's going to be here. We might not necessarily be able to change that, but we have to change what we can do for ourselves and to ourselves. So, my call to action is understand that as African Americans living in America, there are numerous things that can generate an angry response. Don't let the anger rule you. Do what it takes not to let the anger rule you and eat away at you and impact you physically and impact you mentally and impact you spiritually. Don't let it control you. Turn the anger into a positive. Take action. We're talking about anger specifically related to, as I said, microaggressions and racism. Become involved in some type of social action that is going to make a difference. It doesn't have to change the whole world. Maybe you can make a difference in your neighborhood. Make a difference. And as I always say, vote. The people you vote into office can make it better or worse. We're in midterm elections. Find someone who not just one issue believes in what you believe. Find someone who think you feel is going to vote to make things better. And that can mitigate some of that action. Put in laws that are going to make things better. Practice, and the last one is practice self-care and get help when you need it. If you need to find a therapist, if you need to go to an anger management group, if you just need to have that good friend to vent to, And they might tell you, you need a little more help than I can give you. But um, find ways to manage that anger before the anger manages you. So thanks for joining tonight. And as we like to say, Black mental health is Black health. Go out this week. As you see things make you angry, you control the anger and don't let it control you. And I'll see you next week.